total cost of migrants not born in the United Kingdom in unemployment benefits is $8 billion a year. Fantastic. 1,700,000 people are not looking for work despite being migrants to the country. Unbelievable. William Yarwood is the media campaigns manager of the Taxpayers Alliance. William, welcome.
Good evening, Andre. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's not great, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. And it's going to be taxpayers footing the bill for this. I mean, like you said there, 8.8 billion for jobless migrants. And actually, according to the Daily Mail article and the report by the Centre for Migration Control, that cost is actually could be possibly higher as 20.3 billion if you account for housing costs, transport, health, education costs, welfare. And also you add on top of that the cost of illegal immigration. The fact that it's costing around 8 million a day to keep illegal immigrants in migrant hotels, and that cost is likely to go up. And the question really here, Andre, to ask is, when is enough going to be enough?
I worry about the whole thing because I think that there was a time when we brought people to Britain in order to enhance Britain, in order to be part of Britain, yes, to earn some money and yes, to be a success, but also because they loved Britain. I think now there is a huge number of people who come to Britain because they hate Britain, but they believe that they should exact reparations for Britain's role in global politics.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is also there's been no political party over the last few decades that have won an election that has ran on an open borders pro-migration platform. Not even Tony Blair in 1997 ran on that. The Conservatives in 2010 did not run on that, and even this new Labour government did not run on that. They themselves said that they need to get control over immigration and that the Conservatives have become addicted to mass immigration, which is rather interesting considering how the Labour Party's talking points around immigration have been in the past. But nevertheless, there's a democratic deficit here between what voters want and what they get. And what they're getting is mass immigration on an unprecedented scale than ever before. And yet there are, as it pointed out here, 1.6 million migrants in the country currently, costing taxpayers 8 billion. So voters are voting against for mass immigration, all the while having to pay for mass immigration that they didn't vote for in the first place.
But it doesn't matter which way you vote, it's going to happen anyway.
Oh, yeah, I don't disagree with you on that one at all, Andre. I mean, the Conservative government failed in regards to controlling net migration completely. We saw an intensification of net migration under Tories, especially between 2020 and 2022. And that figure is consistently going to go up. So the argument might be that there's, no one to vote for or there's nothing to vote for. But the point of the matter is politicians do not get a handle on this, and politicians do not start listening to ordinary hardworking taxpayers about immigration, then quite frankly, more and more people are just going to stay at home and not vote.
I have to say to you, the one thing that amazes me is this situation with the Labour government and the minimum income for partners coming over. You have to earn a minimum of 29,000. They want to raise that the Conservatives wants to raise that to 38,700. The big problem is you're marrying partners, and we are in a situation, I think we've got to be honest about this, where there are people from places like Pakistan and Bangladesh where they marry the next person on the list, if you like. This cousin marriage thing is not about some commitment to incest. It's about a desire to move the village lock, stock and barrel into the United Kingdom, and you see it a great deal up north. I think if you're going to do that, you have to at least be able to pay the bill for your wife or husband.
Yeah, completely. And you mentioned Labour Party policy there. One thing that's interesting about Labour Party policy is that it's been influenced by a little-known quango known as the Migration Advisory Committee. Now, the Migration Advisory Committee is a taxpayer-funded, opaque quango stuffed full of academics who, of course, are on the taxpayers' dime as well, all of whom advocate for policies, like you said, of lowering the minimum requirements of income to come into the country, increasing student visas. There's a little pattern going on here. They're all wanting to increase immigration, and Why? Because the majority of the academics in that committee are working at universities which are highly reliant on student visas and international student fees, many of which can be costing 35k a year, which is quite lucrative. And of course, why on earth would they vote or ask for less immigration when their entire jobs rely on it? And with the Labour Party strengthening this committee, like they said they would in this manifesto, quite frankly, it's showing where the priorities lie, which is not controlling immigration.
Do you know something, William? I want to talk to you a little bit about the quangocratisation of British governance. I've always railed against Tony Blair and the Stakeholder Society. This idea where democracy is less important than talking to groups of individuals, consultation on this, and beer and sandwiches. I suppose they don't do that anymore. In the old days, perhaps at the TUC. What David Starkey has said, and I think the guy's an absolute genius, he's turned around and he said, look, the major problem we've got is it's not government by experts, it's government by extremists. Who would go on the Immigration Advisory Committee unless they were a crazed pro-immigration lunatic? You know what? When Sadiq Khan set up his committee about public art, who is going to go on other than the lunatics who want to rip down every single statue of a white guy? Nobody would go on it. They don't represent anybody other than themselves. And you see it with Natural England. We try and alleviate the housing crisis in the south of England, and then they find a bloody slow worm or a bat that prevents you. And what you're doing is, by moving away from democracy and moving towards government by extremists, you are just empowering the biggest loonies in the country and not bothering to balance that with any idea of context of trying not go too far.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't disagree with you at all on that. The increase of the quangocracy since the Blair era has been astronomical. And actually, it's interesting you mentioned that, Andre, because I've actually just started a monthly piece with CapX called Quango Watch, where every single month I'm going into a new Quango and revealing what it does, why it exists, and why it should not exist. But to go back to Migration Advisory Committee just quickly, one thing you also mentioned earlier on in the show was about quangocracy and indeed charities receiving taxpayers' cash. There is an academic in the Migration Advisory Committee who works for a pro-migration sort of academic group which received over £1 million in taxpayers' cash. And when you regard to the last Conservative government as well, the last Conservative government, Rishi Sunak, in his manifesto wanted to strengthen the Migration Advisory Committee and give it more control over setting caps on immigration, because they are abdicating their responsibility to the British people to protect them.
I'll tell you what we're going to have to do. I'll tell you what we're going to have to do, William, and I don't want to produce the show from the presenter's seat, but by God, I'm going to speak to the producers on this show, not all of whom are watching because obviously the bookers are up earlier in the morning, but we've got to do a monthly Quango watch with you, where whichever Quango you have identified as the abolitionee of the month, we've got to talk about it. Go through the counties, maybe even try and invite on the chairman. They won't come, but like literally, it would be genius. So in conjunction with William Yarwood and CapX, we're going to have monthly the Quango of the month. Let's do it. And do you know what I'll do? I'll buy a little trophy and I'll send it to them. You will have an award for the most pointless Quango that month.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Well, just to give you a little sneak peek of what's coming up, the first one I'm attacking is the Office for Budget Responsibility, which this current Labour government wants to strengthen.
What about... What about the Audit Commission? You've got to get rid of the Audit Commission. They don't audit anything, right? They're not auditors. It's brilliant.
Oh, Andre, the list I have of Quangos is longer than I would wish to admit, but don't worry, I'll be getting round to as many as I possibly can, and by many as possibly I can, I mean all of them.
Well, I will get a little trophy. We can have Quango Queen of the Month. I'll be willing to send them a little tiara or something for them to wear, and we'll invite them on. But you're absolutely right, and I'll tell you why it's such an important project, William, because I've always said that the audience that we have, you know, are not stupid the way that Labour think they're stupid or the BBC think they're stupid. They're just busy. They don't know what all of these things are, and they don't understand it. But they get a general sense, when you talk to my viewers and listeners, they get a general sense that everything's hard these days. Everyone's a government inspector nowadays, and you don't know why it's become so difficult. But these quangos, if we can expose them, would be phenomenal. So congratulations, William. You've been promoted to our new monthly segment of Quango Watch, Queen Quango. I'll literally sit in my car on the way home, and I will find a load of trophies, and we will put them in a bit of this building where people don't steal from, which has admittedly been a problem with Ben's box, if I'm being totally honest. But anyway, okay, that's William Yarwood, who is now our monthly contributor on Quango Watch.